Welcome back to the Obsession Engineering Garage, where it's time for a new project. Having finished the lovely 748 Ducati, this time I decided to do something completely different. And then I bought something that was Italian and a V-twin. So not completely different, but it's got flat handlebars. So it's different enough.
And here it is. It's an Aprilia. I mean, I've got an Aprilia workshop sign over there, so it shouldn't be really any surprise that I like an Aprilia. I've owned a V4. My first proper motorbike was an RS125, which was cool. And now I have a 2006 Tuono R. So this bike's been sat for a couple of years, so it needs a little bit of recommissioning. But actually, it's not going to be a particularly long project, I hope. It's done less than 20,000 miles. It's done a bit of touring, so it's got a few marks here and there. It has a snapped-off bolt to hold the seat, so I need to sort that out. Good bit. It's got an Öhlins out of a factory model. It's got some really nice Aquapovic cans. And it is generally in nice condition. It had the last owner for 13 years. So he really liked it. He just got to the point where he wasn't using it and it sat in his garage for a while. Being Italian, it might have an electrical fault or two. But we'll get onto that in a minute.
The bike hasn't been run for a couple of years because it had a charging fault, which the owner believes he fixed, and then he had another child or something like that. Something happened, so he ended up not riding it, and it sat in his garage, and it's not been run for 2 years. So the first thing I'm going to do is try and make brum brum noises. So I'm going to put fresh fuel in it, I'm going to disconnect the ignition pickup, and I'm going to turn it over on the starter to get some oil moved around it, and then I'm going to see if it starts, and then I'm going to check if it actually does charge or not. And then I'll know if I need to take everything apart.
So using my siphon pump that I use on my race bikes for measuring fuel, I'm going to suck as much of the old fuel out of the tank as possible, and then I shall put some fresh in it.
Modern petrol is crap. Normal run-of-the-mill cheap 95 octane stuff, if you're using it every day and burning it, it's fine. But it contains ethanol, and ethanol attracts water. So if you leave a bike stood for too long with normal pump fuel in it, it can attract water into the fuel tank and rot the bottom of the fuel tank and damage the fuel filters and fuel pumps and stuff. One advantage in the Aprilia is it has a plastic fuel tank so it won't rot. The disadvantage is the ethanol in the fuel distorts the plastic. But this tank looks okay, so it probably had super unleaded in it, which tends to have less ethanol, if any at all. So that's a good thing. I've also had a little look inside it, and the bottom of the fuel pump and bits look absolutely fine, so I don't think we've got any corrosion issues. So I'll put some fresh fuel in it, so we'll carry on for the next bit.
Now that it's got fresh fuel in it, I wanted to check the battery voltage, because what I don't want is a lazy battery breaking the sprag clutch while the engine tries to sort of backfire. So 12.7 volts, that's looking fairly healthy. The previous owner did actually keep it on a sort of trickle charger all the time, so that's kept the battery going. So I turned the ignition key on and the dash did actually light up. And it showed me some battery voltage, and I pressed the start button and it went click. And as you can see from that, the battery's not very happy. I think it's fair to say this battery is actually goosed. So I've removed the goosed original battery, and I've nicked this good quality Shorai lithium battery out of one of my race bikes. So I shall press that button to turn the alarm off. Fuel pump's priming. Got some battery voltage. Well, it's Italian, I didn't really expect it to work first time. Or probably second time. I think I might whip the spark plugs out of it, check their condition, and go from there. My initial thoughts when it didn't start was that it had sucked a bit of bad fuel through from its fuel hoses. So I've lifted the tank up and I've pulled out the spark plug off the rear cylinder, and it's quite dry. It's actually looking pretty good. So I'm just going to rest it against the engine so it earths properly, and I'm going to try and turn the engine over and see if we get a spark. Well, we have a spark, so that would tell me that we're not getting any fuel. So I think I'll pull the fuel filter, the fuel pump out the bottom of the tank, and see if the fuel filter was blocked. I've got the fuel tank off, so now I'm just going to undo the bolts around the outside of the pump, take the pump out of it, and check the filter and bits in it to make sure they're not bunged up. You can hear the fan running in the background, so I'm keeping well ventilated. This is the fuel pump, and you can see this sort of weird, like, jelly stuff in the bottom. That's actually old petrol that's gone off, and it goes quite hard, and it's just horrible stuff. So what I'm going to do is whip this apart and make sure there's nothing in the fuel filters. Got the screws apart that hold the filter together. The pump and the tea bag filter that we call it is looking pretty clear. I can sort of see on there. There's a few bits of this horrible stuff kicking around, but it's not bad at all actually. I'm just going to pull the main filter off and blow that through, and then I shall put it back together and see what the fuel lines are like. That's the fuel pump back together. I've blown all the filters out, cleaned everything. I've had to replace one of the clips with a little Jubilee clip there, as you can see. So that can go back in the pump, in the tank even, and then I can check the rest of the fuel lines. While I've got the tank off, it seems like a good idea to take the airbox lid off and just check the air filter. So I'm going to buzz these screws out, lift the lid off, and have a look down the holes. With the airbox lid off, I'm just going to undo the screws, take the air filter out and have a look. If that's clean, then I shall get a torch, look down the holes, and then decide a plan of action. So this is the dirty side of the air filter, and if we sort of open it up, hopefully we can focus, it's not the cleanest thing I've ever seen. There's a few bugs and bits in it. It's not terrible, but I'm just going to give it a blow through. It's not certainly going to stop us running, so I'll give that a clean, and then at some point I shall probably replace it with something a little better. The air filter's blown out and back in, so the next thing I'm going to do is look down the hole. So I've turned the sort of torch bit on, and there's certainly nothing terrible and bunged up down there. With a torch on its own, I can actually see down there that the backs of the valves have got a bit of dirt on them and bits, but just normal running stuff, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. And I think as a little bit of a cheat, I'm going to squirt some brake cleaner straight down there and see if we can actually get the thing to fire. Right, I've squirted some brake cleaner down there, so I shall turn the alarm off, turn that back on, and we'll see if we get any firing up at all. Yes, it fires, so in fact we'll do that again. Bit in there, and right, so I know it actually runs, it just doesn't run with its own fuel supply. So now I definitely know it is a fuel supply issue. So I shall put the airbox lid back on, I'll probably put the tank back on, and actually try it now everything's been cleaned out and see what happens. Right, let's try that again. I've put all the airbox, the tank on, I've put petrol in it. That might be a little bit of the residue of the old stuff. Yeah, I'm not convinced this is liking itself. Yeah, that's not getting any fuel. Being as there's nothing terribly obvious as to why the fuel system isn't working, I'm always suspicious about alarms, because, well, its idea is to stop the bike functioning. It has an immobiliser system in it, so I'm going to take it off. I do actually have a general dislike for alarms on motorcycles, because all they really do is beep when you don't want them to and annoy the hell out of you and kill your battery. So I'm going to take that off. But in the ways of making people not steal motorbikes, I'm probably not going to record how I do it. That's the alarm removed, a bit of a faff, but I don't like them anyway, so even if it doesn't work, I've not lost anything. Because look, it's not deafened me when I've tried to turn the thing on. Right, let's see what happens this time. can hear the fuel pump running, and we're getting nothing. Right, back to the drawing board.
So far, I've got the engine spinning over nicely on a good battery. I've checked all the fuel system out, up to the injectors and everything's clean. I've taken off the alarm and checked all the wiring for that. I've found the clutch switch that had managed to fall off the clutch perch and refitted that and tested it. And I still can't get it to start. There's something stopping the injectors from firing. I've checked all the wiring connections to the cam position sensor and such like. There is nothing that should be stopping it, but there is, and I'm a little bit perplexed. So I'm going to go away and try and find some more information, and then I'm sure in the future I will make it work, or I'll take it outside and set fire to it. Thanks for watching, and join me again next time when I take an Aprilia outside and set fire to it.